Okay, great. Let's do it. Record us. Oh, it's recording.
Good start.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Good Vibes FC. I'm Sam Mewis, coming to you from the Women's Game World Headquarters in Vermont. And also, it's kind of the Thunderstorm World Headquarters lately as well.
You know, I miss a really good thunderstorm. I'm Becky Sauerbrunn, coming to you from Portland, Oregon, where we don't get them. And it makes me sad.
That is sad for you, Reba. It is pretty rainy out there right now. What's going on, Becky? It's been a few weeks since we've had you on here. Update us.
I know, it's been sad. I've been really sad. Kind of the same old, same old. I had my birthday dinner a few days after our podcast aired the last time. And it was a fantastic birthday dinner. We went to a place called Akati.
Okay.
And it's West African food, which I'd never had before. And it was so good. And the dessert, because it was my birthday, they came out with like this, like kind of like beignets with powdered sugar on it. And the people I was at dinner with, like, I felt really seen. The gifts that they gave me were like pretty perfect. It was like wine and then wine stoppers, because I never finish a bottle of wine because I can't because of soccer. And so it like helps keep it fresh.
Love
and
that.
then someone else gave me like a cat massager. Like it just massages their head. And I was like, you guys, like, you know me so well. Thank you so much.
That is so cute. Did you get a little birthday drink?
I mean, I did, because I waited a few days after we played, because we played like close to my birthday. I did have a few cocktails because I do love me a good cocktail.
Did you get a mojito?
I didn't. I wanted to go more like what was on their cocktail list, because I wanted to try like, something a little bit more suited to the cuisine, which was West African. And so had a few of those.
You know, when you have a friend and you just like clock certain things about them, like certain drinks they like I know that you like mojitos and I know that you like whole milk iced lattes.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I feel seen again, Sam.
I mean, that's not a gift at all, but I do remember a few things about you, Reba. Speaking of restaurants, I wanted to tell everybody, my husband, Pat, is having a sandwich pop up again. He used to do those like about a year ago when we were living in Boston, and he's doing it again here in Vermont at this place called Vivid Coffee on Saturday. And he's going to do burgers, and he's doing like a veggie burger and homemade potato chips. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to be fun.
Go, Pat. I really feel like I've missed out. Like, I know Lynn has gotten to eat a lot of Pat's food. I've never experienced it. And I heard it's like a whole thing.
We've never lived in the same area for you two. But yeah, my gosh, during COVID, we would just like come up with some like complicated recipe for Pat to make because we were so bored. And he made us like French onion soup one time. Lynn has gotten to eat a lot of Pat's food. It's so good. And I'm so excited for him. It's going to be really fun to see him in his element.
Didn't she say that Pat was like the most messy chef ever? Like, by the end of the meal, like everything was just everywhere.
Yeah. In the home kitchen, all of his like professionalism kind of goes out the window. But I do have to say, in a professional setting, he has his shit together. But like at home, he's like at home, you know?
Yep, totally. I'm sad I missed out on that too.
Yeah, I know. Lynn is not sad about it. I mean, Lynn wishes she missed out on the messiness. That was a complicated way for me to say that. Anyways, okay, today on the podcast, let's get to it. We are going to talk about the debut of me as Coach Mewis with the Vermont Green. We're going to go through all of the NWSL standings as we just crossed the halfway point of the season. We're breaking down where each team is with less than half the season left to play. Plus, we have the debut of a brand new segment called Book Talk with Becky Sauerbrunn. Do you need some summer reading? Well, our girl Becky is here to help with that. And we're going to take a email from Jenna S. to discuss how national team players approach playing club games so close to an Olympic tournament. But before we get to all of that, Becky and I are the self-anointed It Takes Two of women's soccer because we're like kind of twins, but we're not actually related. There are two of us. It's a Mary-Kate and Ashley movie. You're going to get it in a few minutes, I promise. It's very, very fun. So let's get into the soccer. There were a ton of NWSL games this weekend, but I do want to start off with a non-NWSL game that was very near and dear to my heart. The Vermont Green, up the green.
Oh, I love that.
I coached this team in their first ever game, Becky, and it was so much fun.
Okay, how did this all come about?
I know. So this is what I think happens in Vermont is like basically we moved here in February and I had like reached out to the UVM women's soccer coach kind of like wanting to come out to a training and meet some people. Like we moved here really with like no friends. So I was kind of like, what's the best way to make friends is to reach out to the soccer community. And then she introduced me to the coach of the men's Vermont Green team. And we had coffee and we talked about the club. And then eventually I got introduced to the founders of the club, who are these three guys. They're so awesome. They're like, I feel like we have so much in common. That's something I've really found about living here in Vermont is like everybody who's doing cool stuff, like just kind of like meets and like does cool stuff together. So these three guys, Sam, Matt, and Patrick, founded this club. It's in USL 2, so it's basically like a summer league for college players. But the community is so invested in the team and they sell out almost every game. Everybody knows what it is. It's like this really fun summer thing that happens here in Vermont. And so I just got to meet them and got to talking, and they told me their plans about wanting to start a women's team and how it was going to start with just this one-off exhibition game against this other team from Canada, 3 days of training, a 4-day commitment. Do you want to be involved? And I was like, I mean, yeah, obviously, like it sounds so fun. So it honestly just kind of came together out of a few connections and like it just kind of like happened.
Did you, like, have you thought about coaching before? Like, have you coached before?
I guess not. Like, I guess I've only coached, I think, as much as anybody has. Like, I've coached, like, kids at a camp and, like, done a couple of clinics. But I've never really coached at all. I think I took, like, the online e-coaching license years ago. So I'm not really, like, qualified. But I've thought about coaching. I think that getting right back into the same kind of lifestyle as I was doing when I was playing, which is like traveling a lot and just being like really 24/7, like you're at home watching film late into the night, it kind of intimidated me. And I wanted to do this and try podcasting and try, this is more remote than I think coaching would be. So I kind of was excited to get into this side of it, but I haven't really ruled it out either. So I guess it's like something I've thought about a little bit.
Okay.
Have you thought about coaching?
I have. I am with you where I feel like being a head coach or an assistant coach almost seems like it's more effort and time than just being a player. Because I know I've talked to my coaches and they're like, when we have one off day, it's not an off day for us because we're in there clipping film, prepping for the next game. And I'm like, dang. And then the player management aspect of it, I'm just like, wow. Being a coach seems so difficult. Especially, I'm thinking for you, like you're going to a training, you don't know any of the players. Were you like, hey, if you're a forward, line up here, and then just like start a practice being like, okay, let's get 2 midfielders there. Like, how did that go?
Yeah. So, well, first and foremost, I had a lot of help. So Brad Agus and Lee Williamson helped coach. And Brad, who has a lot of coaching experience, he really like ran the sessions. But honestly, none of us knew or had ever met more than a couple of the girls. So going into day one, I had met a few of the UVM girls. We had some players from UVM, from Middlebury, like local Vermont players, but a few girls flew in. A girl from BC who's transferring to Miami, a girl from Indiana University, like a few girls really like traveled to come and be here for these 4 days. And we really didn't even know anybody's name. Brad had kind of put together positionally who he thought might go where, but that was before we had ever seen anybody play. So day one was really just like trying to learn names and identify who might be able to play well together in what formation? Don't know. What's the opponent going to be doing? Don't know. So we like really didn't know anything, but I have a hilarious story. Like that day, us coaches were like huddled around this little table after practice, like frantically being like, who was this playing this position? Who was this playing this position? Who should be starting? Who should sub in off the bench? And we were trying to like start creating a team with very little information. And it gave me this flashback, Becky, to 2019, like seeing Jill Ellis and Tony Gustafsson and Graham Abel huddled together at the field frantically. And us all kind of looking over there at them like, what are they talking about? Are they talking about us? Are they talking about like who should start? And like they 100% were. Like, it just gave me so much clarity to what the coaches are talking about when they're all huddled up panicking. And it's like, they don't really know what to do either.
Yeah, I would always look over and be like, oh, they totally thought I had a terrible training session. Now I'm not starting anymore. You could just feel the vibes.
That definitely could have been it. Like I used to feel the same way. That, you know what else it was though, Becky? It's like when I would mess up a long ball with my left foot, I doubt that they were really like, oh yeah, we were just waiting for Sam to mess up that long ball with her left foot. Like, we've been paying attention to that specific thing. Like, they have so much to think about. They have 23 other players hanging around doing good and bad balls with their left and right foot. Like, it gave me this sense that as a player, you're so invested in your own performance, but that as a coach, there are so many other factors that you have to consider before you like pull someone. So it was really eye-opening, like just how big the scope is as a coach. Does that make sense?
It does. And that also just adds into my thought that being a coach is incredibly difficult. All the things that you have to take into account.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I think that every like frustration I've ever had with the coach, I kind of like forgave on Saturday because I was like, I wouldn't want these girls to hold this over my head because I'm really trying my absolute hardest. Like we really tried to do the best we could for the team. And when I think about any time I've been mad at a coach or frustrated at a coach for missing something or not making the right decision in a given moment, like obviously those coaches probably have a lot more experience than me, but I almost like have a soft spot now for like mistakes that coaches make because they want to do what's best for the team and they want to win too, but like it's hard.
Yeah. It sounds like this experience as you're playing, like still an active player, would be very beneficial just for like giving grace to the coaching staff, but also like having a better understanding of what they have to go through. I think would give you yourself as a player just like, okay, I'm going to give myself a little bit of grace that I missed that left-footed long ball.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was so eye-opening and I did love it, but like I said, just the scope of being a coach is bigger because it's not about you. It's about everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think as a player, you try to control your performance and of course positively impact the team, but the scope is just so individual. It's like all I can really do is play the best I can. But as a coach, you're like, there's so many factors.
Okay, so going into game day, were you as nervous as a coach as you were as a player? Like, were you on the toilet 3 times before your debut as a coach?
No, but I was nervous, but it was less physically nervous. Like, I think before a game, I was physically nervous. Like, I felt it in my whole body and, like, yes, would be on the toilet, like, nervous. As a coach, it was like, it wasn't as physical. It was like more mental. That was just kind of like, I didn't tell the girls this and I don't know if they're going to ever listen to this, but I think because I had such little information about the other team. So the build up to the game was like huge. Vermont is obviously a smaller community. Everybody knows this club. The game was sold out really quickly. So we had 2,500 or 3,000 people coming to the stadium to watch. Like, it felt like a really big deal. And I had no idea the level of the other team. So I think going into it, I was like, and this is no reflection on our players who were so great. What is this team like? What level of players do they have? Have they been playing together for years? I don't know. We could win this game 6-0. We could lose this game 6-0. We could tie and go into penalty kicks. Like, I genuinely just didn't know what to expect. All I knew was everybody's name. I learned everybody's name. I'm really, really proud of that. It took me like about 48 hours, but I got it. And all I knew was the information that we had gathered over the 3 days. So I don't think I realized that there was still a lot in my control as a coach, like the timing of subs and the messages delivered before the game and at halftime. Any tactical adjustments, there was still a lot that the coaches could do. Like, I think sometimes you hear a coach from the sidelines is like, I've done my job. And honestly, that didn't really feel true at all. I actually felt like I still had a lot of important decisions to make, especially with subbing. But was I nervous? Yes, mostly because I didn't have a lot of information.
Yeah, which also, in a way, could be like a blessing. You're like, I just don't know what I don't know, and I have to deal with what I have. And like you said, it's in your own, the things that you can do, you felt in control of.
Totally. And that was helpful Like at a certain point, me and Brad, the other coach, just looked at each other and we were like, we genuinely did the best we could and this will be what it will be. But I was like a little bit like, I kept going up to all the staff and being like, what do you think is going to happen? And I think the fact that I was nervous like rattled them a little bit and they were like, what do you mean? Like, we're going to be fine.
Okay. Walk us through the game.
Okay. So it's so cool. It's great. The stadium is full. We're wearing green uniforms. Like, it was awesome. It was like good weather. It has been really rainy here, so it was good weather. The first half was like so interesting. We learned a lot. I felt like our 9, her name was Neve. She was really isolated, but she was getting some chances, kind of in transition on a counterattack, but she was pretty much alone. And it's not like they were getting a ton of chances. The other team was called FC Laval. They weren't getting a ton of chances, but I definitely wasn't like chill. Like I was kind of like, what should we change? Neve needs more support around her. But we didn't change much. We asked the wingers, I'm getting into the tactics here.
Yeah, you
really are. We asked the wingers to pinch in a little bit narrower to try and give some support around our 9 a little bit more. And then Neve ended up scoring in the 63rd minute. And I literally jumped up and down, Becky, like a little kid. Like I like hopped on 2 feet in place. I hugged both my other coaches. Like we were so psyched. Neve had like such an incredible celebration. If you haven't seen it, you need to go look it up. It's like probably on the Vermont Green social media. She like got this great pass. She dribbled in. She scored with her right foot. She like bent it far post, like kind of upper 90. It was pretty sick. And then she like did a slide into the cameras and then ran and high-fived the stadium, the fans. Like it was so baller of her. It was like the coolest thing I've ever seen. I know. So that was amazing. We're up 1-0. And then naturally, our team was getting a little bit tired and we kept being like, should we make subs? Should we make subs? But we just didn't know what to do. And then the other team scored like literally in the 90th minute, Becky. And I swear to God, my soul left my body.
And of course, the match goes into PKs because you can't end an exhibition match on a tie.
No. So we go straight into PKs. And you know what I was thinking about, Becky? Was the 2021 Olympics. I watched our PKs against the Netherlands from the sidelines, and that's how I felt. Like, that's how much I cared about this game. Like, I was standing there, like, kind of praying. Like, kind of like, please don't let us lose this game. We missed our first PK, which was tough. I felt terrible for her because she had actually just subbed off. So she kind of went back in cold and we felt in retrospect, maybe we shouldn't have put her in that position. But then they ended up missing 1 too. So then we make it all the way through 5 kicks and we only told 5 people. Like this is another thing with coaching, Becky. It's like we had 3 days to prepare. We went over everything. We went over the wall. We went over corner kicks. We went over the kickoff. We went over tactics. But of course we didn't go over PKs 6 through 10. Like, sorry.
Oh, Sammy. But did you go through PKs 1 through 5?
No, but I was going to leave that information out, but you just called me out.
So no PKs were talked about. Got it.
No PKs were talked about. I genuinely feel like we just didn't have time, which is fine. It worked out. So anyways, so we go through 1 through 5. It's tied. And then our goalkeeper saves number 6. Ugh. Holy moly. But we hadn't assigned a 6th kicker. And so this girl, Roshan, she goes to Middlebury. She like self-selected and said, I'll do it. A hero.
Baller.
She goes up there and she scores it. And like, I was so happy and relieved, Becky. It was like, it felt so good. Like it felt like winning a game, a big game as a player. It felt just as good. It was so awesome. And I have just missed that feeling so much. Like I miss the pure joy of winning. It's like the best feeling ever. And I haven't felt it in so long.
Well, that makes me really happy that you got to experience that again. And hopefully you can find some way, if it's through coaching or something else, where you get that feeling.
I know. I might just have to start hosting more game nights.
Like Monopoly game nights?
Yeah.
Okay, so winning feels amazing. as it always does.
Yeah.
What was like the crowd like afterwards? Like, were you going around signing autographs? Like, did you have some media stuff?
Yes to all of the above. So after every Vermont Green game, they like open the gates and they let all the fans and kids like run onto the field. And it was like crazy. Like it was 2,500, 3,000 people were there. Obviously not everybody came down onto the field, but it did feel like there was really a lot of people down on the field. So I was kind of like in this little circle of kids who like wanted an autograph or a picture. It was so cute. And I was like spinning in a circle, like signing as fast as I could. It was really, really sweet. The whole community was so thankful to the club for putting this on. I think it was like such an incredible representation of women's soccer in our area. And everybody was really like thankful to me too, which was nice for being a part of it. But I honestly felt so thankful to them for letting me be a part of it, for coming out to support the game. It was such a great experience. And I think very reflective of like the Vermont community as a whole, just super supportive and very connected, if that makes sense.
That's super lovely. So it sounds like if given the opportunity, you would do it again.
I would totally do it again. I feel like I learned a lot. I would definitely talk about PKs before the PKs happen. Probably my main lesson. But I think the best part about it was that feeling of being a part of the team. Like I got to kind of give like a little pregame speech. And I basically just said to them, like, this is so awesome to be a part of. And don't take for granted that this, even though we've only been together for 4 days, like this is a team and you're a part of it and you get to go play a soccer game. Like none of us get to do that forever. So whether you play or not, just try to enjoy this and like be as much a part of it as you can, because this could be such an awesome experience and memory for everybody here. And then it ended up being exactly that. Like I genuinely think even the girls who didn't get to play really bought in and appreciated that we won in this dramatic fashion and the community was so supportive. So I had this feeling like I was a part of the team, and that was like really the coolest part.
What is the future for the Vermont Green? What are the next steps?
Yeah, I hope. So the men's team still has some games left this season, which is really cool. The founders have like kind of made a commitment that they're going to have a women's team, but they've done so actually very thoughtfully. They don't just want to throw it together and have it be less than the men's team just because it's newer or there's less teams for them to play. So I think that they're actually doing it in this really thoughtful way where they want to create 2 equal teams that are both Vermont Green, and they are working on that. I don't necessarily have a timeline, but there will definitely be more exhibition games at least next year, next summer is what I've been told. I have no idea yet what my role will be, but I really enjoyed being part of it and like had the best time.
That's awesome, Sammy. Up the green.
Oh, thank you, Becky. Up the green. We have a lot of NWSL to get to, so let's go. We just passed the halfway point of the NWSL season. I really can't believe that. It's so crazy. There are 26 total match weeks, and this was week 14. So everybody's even on 14 games. Nobody has a game in hand right now. Everybody's even. So let's check in on how everybody's doing with 12 matches left to play before the Shield winner is announced. We are going to start, unfortunately, at the bottom with Utah, whose movie this week is 1492, everybody. 14th place, 1492. You get it now. It's a movie about discovering America. And Utah are on their own journey of discovery this year. They have 2 wins. They have 1 draw. They have 11 losses. They did get that second win last weekend over Bay FC. They won 1-0. Super exciting. But then, unfortunately, they had a really tough bump in the road, losing 6-0 at the hands of Orlando this weekend. That game definitely had some bangers from Barbara Banda, from Summer Yates, from Marta, who were all out there quite literally scoring for fun. But 11 losses for Utah is a tough journey of discovery, Becky. Is there a time in the season where a team might kind of lose hope and start thinking about next year?
Oh, I mean, I think that definitely can happen. And I think you see that in a lot of other professional sports. I think like when it comes down to it, it's really about how strong is your team culture. Like even as bad as it can get, if your team culture is strong, you know you can still get something out of the season, even if it's just like, hey, let's figure out what we're made of. And every game is like a test of like, how much do we want it? Where's the effort? It's a journey. Let's learn on this journey so we're better prepared for next year. But it's really like, it comes down to culture and just like an individual's like am I willing through this feeling to still try and like control the things that I can control? I mean, I've been a part of seasons where the coach has literally been like, hey guys, like this is where we need to decide, are we just going to like mess around and have fun? Or are we going to do something about this season? And luckily the team was like, no, we're going to do something about this season.
Yeah, for sure. I even think in Utah's case, like, look, I'm not making any calls that they will not make playoffs or, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? They could turn it around. It's not like they're that far down points-wise. But there are 12 games left, and these players are still, like, they'll still be on this team next year. I think building that foundation and, like you said, Becky, making sure that the culture is something that you want to continue with moving forward into next season. It's not like the off season is 6 months long anymore. Like the off season is a few months. Like everything they do now is building towards next year. So I think it's definitely not time to lose hope and definitely not time to pack it in. Like they still have so much to play for and so much to build towards.
Yeah. And like you said, there's still half a season to play. So much can happen in that amount of time.
Yeah. What's 12 games? 12? If you won all 12 of your games, 12 times 3 is 36. That's a lot of freaking points.
That's a huge amount of points, especially when you think about the middle of this table being as tight as it is.
I know. All right, Utah.
Next, we have 13, which is Seattle. Movie is Friday the 13th. It's a horror movie where you think you've killed Jason, but then he just keeps popping up in every single sequel. And I feel like with Seattle, they like find a way to tie or win a game, and then it's the next game where they give up some goals. We were just like, oh, I thought they had that. I thought their, box defending was going to be better because of what they learned in this game. And it just seems like they get a few steps ahead, kill Jason, and then they're like, man, he popped up again.
I know. It's been tough for Seattle. They did lose Rose Lavelle, Emily Sonnet to Gotham, and then Megan Rapinoe obviously retired. So 3 huge players, starters, like definitely holes in their team. But 13th place, Friday the 13th is not what I would have guessed for Seattle. So it's been tough to watch that. In 12th, we have 12 Angry Men, Houston. 12 Angry Men, not the perfect movie, but we needed to use the number 12. This is more like 11 people who are not having that good of a time yet. Their defense was the big issue at the start, and then their star player, Maria Sanchez, requested a trade away. She ended up going to San Diego. They're 1-2-2 in their last 5 games, so it's not going awful. They've been getting some draws, but just not the wins that they need to start clawing their way back into it. Their defense has been better. Jane Campbell coming up, making some huge saves. I think she's leading the league in saves. They just need to find a way to get some goals. But I did want to add here, Houston in 12th place are only separated from 7th place Chicago by 3 points. So that middle of the table there, Becky, like you just said, that's really that group that's fighting for one of the 8 playoff spots. It's so tight, and a 1-game swing either way could totally shuffle that whole thing up.
Yeah, and when you think about last year when like everybody was just beating everybody and everything was so tight by the end of the season, like, yeah, it's wild. There's going to be so much movement in the next few weeks. Okay, next. In 11th, Ocean's 11, baby, we got Bay. It's like a star-studded heist movie. This expansion team is flashy, but at the end of the day, no one steals Terry Benedict's money and can get away with it. I think we have to wait for the sequel because I do think that this team is on the up and up. They're an expansion team, of course, that takes a little bit of time to gel, but they've got 3 wins, 2 losses in their last 5, which is really good. And this weekend, they beat Angel City 1-0 on a Tess Bodie goal that was like, it was a banger.
Yeah, Bay is a good one to watch. I'm looking at 10th place Angel City. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Obviously, this is core millennial movie. Classic Hollywood story. Matthew McConaughey, Kate Hudson, glitz, glamour, sold out crowds. I think they even go to a Knicks game. Will they have a happy ending? We don't know. Angel City had a difficult 3-game week. They picked up a win, a draw, and a loss, the trifecta of a 3-game week, if you will. They beat Louisville at midweek in a 3-2 thriller that saw goals from 17-year-old Kennedy Fuller, Rocky Rodriguez, and Sydney Leroux. We also have been seeing Kristen Press around the team more and more. She traveled with them this past weekend, and her impact certainly has the potential to bolster this Angel City squad.
Yeah, it's really great to see CP back training, traveling with the squad. It's been, I can't even imagine a journey for her, but it's really good to see her back.
I know. I'm happy for her. Lynn and I talked about this a little bit last week, but I just hope that she continues training at whatever rate is right for her.
Oh, yeah. And you know that she will, for sure. In 9th, this is a little bit of a stretch, guys, but here we go. District 9. A movie where an alien species finds itself stuck on Earth and then proceeds to spend decades trying to escape from the terrible situation that the humans have placed on them.
We did not mean this at San Diego. We just needed a movie with the number 9 in it because they were in 9th place. No shade.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's basically like how have we found ourselves in 9th position? Let's get out of here. That's what I'm putting together with the movie.
Exactly. We love you, San Diego. Okay, this is another little bit of a stretch, but how could we go through this without using 8 Mile as the 8th place movie? So this is the connection that we've made. 8th place, 8 Mile, Louisville. We know 8 Mile is in Detroit, everybody, but is Louisville kind of like the Detroit of Kentucky? I don't want to get in trouble for saying that, but 8 Mile kind of feels right for Louisville. They were able to scrap back in their game against Seattle with 10 players and pull back a draw at the very last minute thanks to Raylan Turner. Louisville's actually leading the league in draws with 7. 7 draws brings us to...
the movie 7 in Chicago in 7th place. So this horror movie / thriller goes through each of the deadly sins, and Chicago can be deadly. We all know that. But sometimes at the end of the day, your wife's head still ends up in a box. And that, I'm sorry, was a spoiler.
I actually have seen 7, and that's an incredible movie.
It's fantastic. It's messed up, but it's fantastic.
It's very messed up, but incredible movie. Chicago also, I mean, Mal Swanson, incredible as the movie 7. I just feel she keeps pulling off these incredible feats. She's scored some amazing goals since she's been back. The team has scored some amazing goals, but they've been letting up some goals. I think their defense has had some holes in it. They actually haven't won since May 12th against Utah, so that's 5 games in a row without a win for Chicago. They lost this weekend to the Courage 3-1.
Which leads very nicely into 6th place, NC Courage, the Sixth Sense. They really do see dead people, at least at home. And if they can figure out how to win on the road, Sammy, which we've talked about earlier this season, they are going to be extremely dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as we said, they beat Chicago 3-1. My girl Mary's back, fresh back from her ACL. She scored a goal. And Ashley Sanchez, a friendlies guest, scored a brace. The Courage are nothing if not consistent. That brings us to Portland, Becky's squad, 5th place, the 5th element. They just need an ordinary cab driver to save the world, even though the odds sometimes seem stacked against them. But at the end of the day, it is possible. You guys are in 5th place, Becky. So talk to us here. How's your team feeling in general? You had a tough loss this weekend, but what's going on over there?
I think if you take into account where we were at the beginning of the season when we were having conversations and we didn't have a win to our name, we are in 5th place, so we had a really great run of form, really climbed our way up the table. I think if you take like a full view so far, like we're doing okay. And then the weekend happened and we lost to Kansas City. And that was the second time we had played them. We had played them the opening day, lost 5-2. So still a -3 goal differential between the games. But I feel like as a team, we've come really far. And I think we have to clean up a lot of things against a team like Kansas City. But I think if we can do that and like learn from the mistakes, and we gave up some set piece goals, you know, things that are in your control. So I think if we shore those things up, like I would love to see them again in the playoffs.
Ooh, I love that, Becky. I don't want to rehash old news, but we had a lot of questions swirling around about Sophia Smith's red card situation. I know she got that second yellow. I know it was like kind of silly in whatever way. And then the whole thing with the appeal and it got denied. What was your team feeling about all of that while that was going on? Like, how was Soph?
I mean, Soph was like upset, obviously. Like, you don't want to get a red card, like a second yellow from the sideline. So she was upset about it, like understandably so. Like, that really sucks to not be able to play in the next game. And then randomly, I'm like watching TV and Zola sends me a screenshot of a Twitter message saying that the appeal was denied. And in fact, Soph has a 2-game suspension and a double fine. And then the Portland Thorns can't appeal anything for 2 years, which is madness. I was like, 2 full years of not being able to appeal something? Like, that's harsh. And then luckily we heard, so that like caused a huge uproar within the team. Our group chat was like going wild, like, what's happening? Soph can't play against Kansas City, like all this. And then luckily Soph was like, no, the PA like appealed the appeal. And so she got to play. She doesn't have to do the double fine. But the Thorns still can't appeal a ban or anything for 2 full years, which is still, to me, like so harsh.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that was wild, but it's going to be wild out here. Brings us to 4th place, the Fantastic Four, the old Gothams. Obviously, if you ask me about the Fantastic Four connection, it's Rose, Sonnet, Lynn, and Kelly. Gotham saw 2 incredible goals in their midweek game last week from Macy Bell. That was that one where she like reached her leg around the defender and like trapped herself the ball and then scored. And then Rose Lavelle scored a banger. So Gotham had one at midweek, but then they lost their way just briefly against the Spirit on Sunday, and they lost 2-0. They saw a red card for Yasmin Ryan, who was trying to come back on the field after a head injury, and the ref gave her a second yellow, and then they played down a player. They also missed a penalty right at the end. But Gotham's injury list is also nearly the length of an entire roster. There's 10 players on there. So I'm hoping for Gotham and all of my Fantastic Four friends' sakes that this... What's crazy to me, there's about to be an 8-week break from regular NWSL play for the Olympics. How will that affect this team of super talents? Maybe some of those 10 players who are right now on the injury list will find their way back on the field.
For sure. I feel like 8 weeks is a very long time for like injury, for loading. Yeah. So I feel like that 10-player roster of injured players will definitely be diminished.
Yeah, but can you, like 8? I did not realize that this break was 8 weeks long. Did you?
Kind of, but like I know that we have other matches. Games. Yeah, like other events that are happening. And so it doesn't feel like 8 weeks.
In 3rd place, we have the Three Musketeers, the Spirit. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that the Three Musketeers are maybe Trinity Rodman, Croy Bethune, and new head coach Jonathan Heraldez. We just saw Jonathan arrive in DC from Barcelona, where he just had an undefeated season and won the Champions League with Barcelona. We will hope to see him coaching from the bench this weekend for the first time. The Spirit actually leapfrogged Gotham with their win over them this weekend. And I'm so interested in having a coaching change when this team has been doing so well. They actually have more wins than anybody else in the league. Their interim head coach has done an incredible job with the team, and now they're getting this like really incredible world-class Champions League winning coach, Jonathan Heraldez. So I'm so interested in seeing how that change affects the team.
Yeah, that is really fascinating because it's like you're kind of throwing in this like bomb that can do good or can do bad. I think it's awesome you're having a coach come in with such pedigree, like such a winner, because winning is a behavior. And so I think you add that onto an already very successful group. Like, do you just take them to the next level? So I'm excited to see how that works for them. Excited, but also like not too excited. Yeah. Going into 2nd with Orlando, we got Too Fast, Too Furious. It's just too much fun. You can barely contain yourself. In 2nd, Orlando had themselves a day against Utah. And one of those games where like you really can do no wrong. And they couldn't stop scoring. You got Barbara Banda, of course. You got Marta. With that, 6 goals. They are down only 1 in goal differential with Kansas City, which, as we know in the NWSL, goal differential matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, Marta has scored an incredible goal in that game, and she is our guest on Friendlies this week, Becky. Can you believe that?
Oh, baller. One of the best to ever do it.
I know. I kind of was like a little bit starstruck on the call, and actually something so silly happened. I've already said this last week in a teaser before the Jaden Shaw interview, but I want to tell you in case you haven't heard it, Becky. I was sitting here at this desk interviewing Marta, and somebody knocked on my door. And my dog started barking. So I like kind of had to go deal with it because my dog had been barking for like minutes while Marta was speaking. And I was like, I'm really sorry, but like, I'm gonna have to go like manage this. And there was like some issue and like I had to deal with it. And I probably left her here for like 2.5 minutes. And I was like so embarrassed that of course I had to go deal with like a home and dog issue when I was interviewing Marta.
That probably endeared you to her, that like just another interview for you, even if it's Marta, even if it's one of the best.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, sorry, I have to go chit chat with the neighbor for a sec. It was just like, oh my God, I was so mortified. But the interview is incredible. I'm really excited for everybody to hear it. It's coming out on Thursday. And that leaves us with 1st place. One fine day for Kansas City. Seems to be smooth freaking sailing for the Kansas City Current, who just cannot stop scoring endless goals. Sorry, Becky. We did see a banger and a brace from Lola Bonta, the 9th goal of the season from Temwa Chawinga, and a 17th player score for the club this season, which is a new record with Stine Balasager. I'm trying not to rub salt in the wound, Becky, but how does this Kansas City Current team compare with league-leading teams from the past?
Oh, that's fascinating. That's a good question. Well, I think having 17 players, different players scoring goals is like such a huge asset going into the remaining half of the season, because this is kind of where teams start picking up some knocks. There's some injuries. There's a couple dips in form for players. And so to be able to rely on so much of the roster for goals, like, I think that's a huge benefit that I don't think I've seen from leading teams in the past, where you have maybe 2 or 3 that are really like dominating the score stat line.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that you're right. That's so dangerous to know that even if you can, for example, stop Temwatch Wingo, which who knows who can, that there are other players out there. Lola Bonta is scoring. Vanessa DiBernardo had been scoring. And now to have a center back scoring off of like, it's just an incredible depth of talent and of like dangerousness that is really hard, I imagine, to defend against. So we have Kansas City Current topping the charts, and it brings us to our Olipop gut check of the week, brought to you by the fabulous folks at Olipop. Reba, I'm actually trying a very special Olipop today, a peaches and cream bar.
As am I, Sammy.
Oh my
as am
God,
I.
we get to try it together. Oh my gosh. Speaking of freaking movies today, am I right?
Oh, what an excellent movie.
I tried it without you. I was too excited.
It's fine. I was having trouble opening it. I've been wearing these like nails, trying out a new thing. It's like hard for me to open things.
Reba, the new nails.
Rare.
Love.
I know.
Rare.
Ooh, Sammy, this is really good.
Pretty delish. It's like kind of a perfect balance of fruity creamy.
Peaches and cream, baby.
Mm-hmm. Well, pretty delicious, Olipop. Thank you so much. We still have to do a gut check. We just went through all the standings. We know who's 1 through 14. Who are the top 8 teams in the NWSL going to be at the end of the season? That's the 8 that will go into playoffs. Do you see much changing, Reba?
I just think they're so tight in that middle that I would have to go with. So I think in no particular order, because I think there's going to be a lot of change. You got Current, Pride, Spirit, Gotham, the Thornies. I think North Carolina, Chicago, and I think San Diego is going to work their way into that.
Okay, so you're sorry to call you out, but you are dropping Louisville.
I am dropping Louisville because I
too many ties.
It's a lot of ties. But I do think the Wave, like they have something about them where I think they can turn this season around. I think they've got the players to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the top 6 seem pretty set to me that they're going to make playoffs. And then I think the next 7 through 12 are really, really close in points. And I can imagine any of them, but I think that I agree about San Diego, and I would probably stick with Chicago at 7. I hope Seattle Reign gets some momentum going just because I just feel for them, I guess. And I just kind of like them. I don't know what that's about. But anyways, you heard it here first. That's kind of who we think maybe is going to make playoffs. And that's our Olipop gut check of the week. So thank you, Olipop.
Thanks, Olipop.
Okay, so we wanted to do something very special today. We want to talk about books. So this is a new segment. It's called Book Talk with Becky Sauerbrunn. Becky, you know, it's the summertime. Everyone is headed to the beach, besides you, who is hoping for a balmy 55 degrees in a cloud-covered forest. But we want to give these beachgoers what they want. We're giving you all 3 book recommendations from the greatest center back of all time and an avid reader. So, Becky, what books do you have for us today?
Okay, so the first book that I have is right here, One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is the type of book when you're on vacation where you're like, I'm going to escape reality. Like, do not talk to me. Do not bother me. I am entering a different world with like a magical system and a lovely romance. And it's a duology. So if you like the first one, you can just like get your way back into the second one and really just escape everything. But it's like so beautifully written and so immersive. And you just like love these characters. You're like, I have found a new family.
Okay, so this is for magical beachgoer who needs to escape the world that they live in and become one with this fantasy world.
Yeah, precisely. And it's, I guess, classified as young adult, but I think some of the best books I've ever read have been like young adult. And I think that it just transcends any age group. Like as a grown woman, like I read this and I'm like, this is a beautiful, beautiful story.
Oh my gosh, One Dark Window.
Yes, One Dark Window.
I'm going to get that and fold it right under my arm and walk down to the beach and give it a read. What do you have for us for book number 2?
Okay, so book number 2 is The Gone World by Tom Swelterlich. And this is more like a thriller, psychological thriller, also with like science fiction like elements to it. So she's a detective, but she can travel into the future to help try to solve crimes that are happening in the present time. And this is for somebody who's like, I want to feel things. Like I want to be like my mind blown. Like this isn't like a pleasant read, kind of like One Dark Window. This is like, this is so messed up, but so awesome. And like, do I want to become a time traveling detective as well?
I wonder if this is a good book for somebody who's going camping in their own backyard, because it's like, I want to be a little bit like spooked, you know, like a little bit like, oh, but I can go inside if I need to. Do you know what I mean? Does that sound like the right kind of?
For sure. Yeah, I would agree. It's like one of those where like you end a chapter and you kind of just close the book and like you think for a second and you're like, dang, that's wild.
Oh my God, Reba, this is like the best book salesmanship I've ever witnessed. Like I'm going to get all these books and you haven't even told us the third one yet.
Well, Sammy, I think you'll recognize the author of this one. The author, Adam Grant, worked with us on the national team. This is one of many books that he has, but this is Give and Take. And so this is for like the beachgoer who's like kind of already looking ahead to getting back to work and being like, you know what? I kind of want to change the entire culture of my business. And I'm going to do that by like kind of understanding the people that I work with. Are you a giver, a taker, a matcher? Who is more successful in the short term over the long term? And Sammy, I don't know if you remember Adam Grant, amazing guy. Like when he came to speak with us on the national team, my mind was kind of blown. I was like, oh my God, you are explaining things that I didn't know you could explain. And this book really changed the way that I look at myself and I look at my relationships with people and how people conduct themselves.
Wow, Reba, what a glowing recommendation. I feel like this is maybe for somebody who's traveling back from vacation. It's like, I need a good book to get me from my vacation world, starting to think back into the real world of like work or school or whatever I'm going back to. And I'm going to read it as I make my transition back into that.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of the Sunday scaries.
Oh my God, what's the opposite of the Sunday scaries? Because I like need to know. Is it like the Friday freaks?
What's an alliteration with S? Like the Sunday, but you're looking forward to something.
Oh, I was thinking that the opposite of the Sunday scaries would have to be on Friday, because it's like, I'm so excited about the weekend. So I'm like, going to go be a freak on Friday. Do you know what I mean? But like, you're saying that you've had like a restful, great weekend. You're like not hungover and you're actually looking forward to Monday.
Yeah, you're like, this is going to be a great frickin' work week.
Wow, I don't know if I've ever felt that way.
What is that elusive feeling? Did we just create the thought of something?
It's like the Sunday calmness. I don't know, everybody. Let us know. Send us an email. I mean, we clearly can't come up with it on the spot. But that's what that book makes you feel like, Becky, is like excited to get back into it.
Yeah, excited to like change a culture or environment. Like if you know something's not going well, like having the power to do that by understanding yourself and the people that you work with and meeting them at where they are at.
That's incredible. That's really incredible. Okay, that's Give and Take by Adam Grant. Book talk, I'm going to go ahead and say was a success, Reba. So make sure you read 3 more books in the next 7 days so that you can tell us 3 more books by next week.
Oh, I got you.
If anybody is going to actually read 3 books in the next 7 days, it's Becky. I'm out here reading all your emails, though, so let's give me a little round of applause for that. Let's go to the inbox. We got an email from Jenna S. that asks, one thing I am curious about as we are heading into the Olympics is how the U.S. women's national team players manage the mental load of wanting to compete and be the best they can for their clubs, play a full 90 minutes, while also being cautious of injuries, playing time, overworking themselves, etc., ahead of a major international tournament. It's very easy for us fans to say that players should come out early and be more cautious during club play ahead of these tournaments, but I'm sure it's not that easy for the players. It seems like it's a tricky mental balance and one I haven't heard players talk about often. Jenna S., what a great question, and you've come to the right place. Becky, what do you think?
I think it is a very fine balance. When you look at the cadence of the Olympics, which we've talked about, it is an incredibly packed, very difficult physically, emotionally, psychologically schedule of these games. I mean, you play, the next day you travel, and then the day following is already match day -1. And so like you have to have tolerance with that amount of load. And you do that, I think, through the NWSL. And so these players that are going to the Olympics, you want them playing significant minutes because it's, toning them and getting them ready to handle that at the Olympics. And so I do think, though, like player for player, if you look at kind of history of injuries, I think there are some games where you're like, all right, we're up 2-0. Let's take this player off. It looks like, she's getting ankle bitten by a bunch of the defenders. Let's not risk it. So I think there is kind of an individual, like you have to take into account the individual, but there's just like the science behind the loading, the GPS monitoring, the communication between the national team medical staff and high performance staff with the NWSL clubs. I think it's getting to a point where it's so good that these players are being well taken care of and there are eyes on them like all the time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think as a player, the balance of it is really tricky because I remember I always used to say when I played for the Courage, I have 2 number 1 priorities. And like that would be the Courage and the national team. This was right around the 2019 World Cup. So it felt like that's what I should be saying. Like both teams are of equal importance to me. And I think that like, while I did really feel that way in a lot of ways, of course, that's kind of impossible. Like, and I think that as a player, you're with your club team so much more than you're with the national team. And you would never, ever, ever want your club teammates to feel like you're holding out to go and play in a World Cup or an Olympics or holding out for the national team as if it's more important. I think that years ago, when the money was so different, there was maybe a little bit of a different approach to that. Like, if I'm dealing with a little bit of a sore hamstring, am I gonna be able to play in a game a week before camp? I don't know. I think now it's a lot easier to imagine that they are much closer of equal importance because the NWSL has just grown so much. But the Olympics is possibly a once-in-a-lifetime thing as well. So I imagine that the players are, like I was, will be stressed about injury until the Olympics are honestly over. Like, the stress of injury never really goes away, but the idea that you could get a call and make a roster and then get hurt in your club game and then not get to go, I think has crossed everybody's mind. And so I think just having some grace and understanding that these players are dealing with these stressors on top of trying to perform at the highest level, trying to make the roster, trying to plan their personal lives around their soccer schedules. Like, it is a lot to consider. And definitely right now, the next couple of weekends are times of, I think, heightened physical awareness where you want to make sure you don't like misstep or roll an ankle or go into an unsafe tackle, I think is kind of something that is in the back of players' heads, which is really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're so right, Sammy, about all of that, about like earlier on in our careers, how the national team was basically how you got your livelihood. Like,
yeah,
you could play soccer as your main job because of the money you got from the national team. So I think it's great that that is now, like you said, becoming more even. And yeah, I totally get that with injury. I always feel like if you're always, it is a hard not to think about it, but like if you're always like thinking you're one roll away from missing a roster, like, is that kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like, are you actually like manifesting it?
So to try to keep it out of your head.
Yeah, like that's what I would try to do as I was getting, hopefully prepared for some of these world tournaments, is like, of course that thought crosses my mind, but I'm like, you gotta stop thinking that. Like, when you go half-ass into a tackle, that's when you're probably going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So it is tough. I totally get all of that. And it is a fine balance. And what these players are going through these next few weeks, like it is stressful.
I know, for sure. I've said this publicly before, but I think the reason that I've spoken about this moment at the World Cup when I was starting in the first game and the national anthem was playing in 2019. And that was the moment that I was like, oh, I did it. And it wasn't really when Jill called me or when we flew there or when I put my jersey on. It was the moment that I couldn't get hurt before I played in my first World Cup game because we had already warmed up. So there was no way I was going to roll my ankle. There was no way anything was going to happen. And that was when I felt a sense of like, oh, I'm actually here. And it speaks to my mindset about it that like I have thought through a million ways in which this could get taken away from me up until the moment that it was impossible. So anyways, I'm sure not everybody is as stressed as I am, but it's definitely a stressful time and players are weighing these things all the time. Jenna, what an awesome question. That was a really good discussion. Thank you so much. If anybody else has questions, don't forget you can send us an email at womensgamemib@menandblazers.com. That brings us to the end of the episode, Reba. I'm really sad to leave you. I'm really sad to leave our listeners here, but we get to leave them with a good vibe.
Okay, my good vibe this week. Okay, so my mom, for her entire career, was a middle school American history teacher. So wherever I was playing, like she'd be like, "Oh, hey, I think George Washington's like second summer home is here. Like, let's go check it out." So she's just like nerding out on this kind of stuff. She it's been a tough few years for my family. She just left to go to England to do like this estate tour of all these like fancy estates across England. And I'm just like so proud of her because she doesn't really like to travel. It like makes her a little anxious. She's with my aunt and uncle, which is great. They travel great together. And she's just doing something that she really loves and she's nerding out. And it's just so great to see her kind of just thriving. So that's my good vibe.
That is so cool, Becky. I am so happy for your mom. I have a good vibe that I plan to share. And now I'm like, did I already say this last week? And am I just that obsessed with iced maple lattes that I'm going to share it again as my good vibe? I don't really know. But basically, Reba, you would love this. A little special treat. Just make your normal iced latte as normal. Oh my God, I said this last week.
We'll keep going.
Anyways, I do realize I already said this, but you guys, I am even more obsessed with these now than I was 2 weeks ago. You make your normal iced latte, a shot of espresso, whole milk, ice, and then you just put like a tablespoon of freaking maple syrup in there. Shake it up in a little jar, Reba.
Oh.
It's so good.
Can I ask you a question about those ingredients? You said a shot of espresso. Did you mean like 3 shots of espresso? Like what iced lattes are you drinking?
For you, probably, an old quad shot. For Reba, I think my espresso machine makes like a double. So yeah, it's like a double shot and a milk and ice and maple syrup.
Okay, and the shaking, I feel like that actually will make a big difference.
Yeah, this is what I do. I put it in this jar. Ice, blah, 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 milk. And then I put a little maple syrup and then
And it gets all frothy?
And the maple gets all shaken up in there. If you just heard that weird sound, don't forget, you can always watch me shake up my maple latte on YouTube if you're interested.
Highly recommend.
So that's my good vibe. Anyway, I'll try to think of a new one for next week because I can't just keep saying maple lattes all year. But that's it. That's it for this week's episode of Good Vibes FC. I really, really hope that you're subscribed to this podcast feed. If not, please subscribe right now, you little cranberry crumble. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch these episodes on YouTube. You can follow along with us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Women's Game MIB. We're also on Threads now. Anybody out there on Threads? We are. Later this week on Thursday, we're dropping our interview with Marta, which you guys already know. I left her hanging. It was an incredible interview, though. We talked about what it was like growing up in Brazil and playing soccer. We talked about how great the Orlando Pride season is going. We talked about Brazil at the Olympics this summer. Marta was incredible. I was so excited and honored that I got to speak with her. So make sure that you listen to that. And all right, everybody, that's it. Goodbye.
I'm Becky.
And I'm Sam Mewis. And this is Good Vibes FC, the podcast that's like Paddington 2, because it's the highest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes, and we know that we are the highest rated podcast in your heart. Okay, love you, bye.